and welcome to the Design Hub, the official podcast of the Institution of Engineering Designers. I'm your host, Molly, and today we're going to be talking to Mandy Chessell. So, to kick things off, could you tell us a little bit about how you got started in this industry?
Sure. So I am a software engineer, and I've been working in the industry for about 40 years. I started probably when I was 14. I always felt I was recruited at 14 because I've been looking at my career options and was lucky enough to attend a session with a chap from IBM. And up until that point, I've been told, well, you can be a teacher or a nurse, or you quite like science, so you could work in a laboratory. And nothing really sort of grabbed my attention. I was thinking it's going to be really boring being an adult. But this chap from IBM came in and talked about the technology industry and how rapidly it was changing. And that meant that when you worked in the industry, you were always learning new things, and you were creating. It's a very creative industry, and also there was a lot of international collaboration, which absolutely appealed to me. I wanted to do something that combined creativity with with complexity in many respects. And at 14, this was the first adult who said it's going to be great when you start work. And so I asked, what do I need to study? And I was surprised at the fact that they did want science, but they also wanted the English, so communication skills, and sort of design type pieces, because really they wanted engineers. So that put me on.
You to get.
Sorry?
So would you say that kind of inspired you?
Absolutely. I mean, I pretty much, right, that's what I'm doing. And so, I took the subjects that matched. When computer science was offered, I took that because I thought, oh, that will be useful. And whenever IBM offered part-time jobs, so I had a summer job at one of their factories, I did my internship. So the third year of my degree was a year in industry, and I did that with IBM. They gave me a bursary. And then when I was in my final year, they wrote to me and said, would you like a job? And so I said, yes. So basically, I didn't look anywhere else. I was completely focused on it. And it turned out to be a very good choice, because it being a big company, and a company that had a lot of focus on developing engineers and understanding that engineers needed a voice. You can't just put them at the bottom of an organization. They have to be available all the way up. I had the opportunity to then grow my career and become an executive while still being an engineer and still building new systems and things, but actually with a voice. So it was a really good start. Sorry, I'm not giving you much chance to talk.
It's okay. I was going to say, so when you did your internship and you did all of the work experience with them, would you say like there were any like pivotal points while you were doing that, or like any challenges that you came across that sort of?
Yes, I mean, so as a student, everyone was very nice to me. And it was my first time building tools for people. And so of course, sometimes I got it wrong, and that was, and and sort of dealing with someone who was very important and scary, and them telling you that things were wrong. That was very good practice, because the tools I was building were small. They were little scripted tools, but it was good to actually work with users and see how your view of the problem is quite different from theirs. Their view is the one that counts. So from a design point of view, that was really good. And the most embarrassing part was that the job that I was doing used to take a person and a half, and so they brought the student in to help.
Speed the heart.
Exactly. And so I started automating, and by the end of my year, everything was automated, and the job was an hour a week, right? So it gone from 1.5 people to an hour a week, and everybody was self-serving basically. And then so they brought on another student, and it was like, oh dear, we don't have much for you to do. And so, I mean, I then sort of went back to college, but it was actually quite interesting that the organization hadn't noticed how things were changing. And so presumably the person that followed me got a different job, ended up doing a very different job.
So
But
I was going
sorry.
to say, so I've actually read a couple of the papers that you've worked on. Um,
Mm.
I read the data lake one.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll admit my understanding of that kind of stuff and metadata very small, very
Mhm.
limited. But with all of your work on that stuff, are there any like maybe recent or particular projects in the past that have particularly like stood out to you?
Yeah, and that one was particularly key because I just started a new job, and where you've got a new boss and you're trying to do the right thing. And he
As in
sent
your
me, yeah, exactly. So he sent me a couple of photographs of a whiteboard discussion that he'd been involved in with a very, very important customer. And there were some notes roughly about what they were asking for. But it was all very rough and sort of thing. And he said, "Oh, yeah, so they're looking for strategic architecture from us. This is the introductory meeting, and well, could you just put one together for us? They're actually getting a little impatient because we promised it a couple of weeks ago, and now it's a bit late. So if you could do it quickly, that would be good." And so I was looking at this, thinking, okay, I wasn't in the meeting. All I've got are these notes. I spoke to other people who were at the meeting and put this together in a couple of days. And I had my new peers saying, this isn't how you do architecture, this isn't right. But because there was nothing else and the customer was asking, they sent it off and the customer loved it. And that book that you're talking about,
Mm.
we actually wrote together. It started a long-term collaboration with that customer. They obviously bought a lot of IBM stuff, which made IBM very happy. But the important thing is that they were looking for a fresh approach. And because I came in cold effectively to it, maybe I was listening better rather than just applying the standard function, the standard way we do things. But it actually turned out to be not only a long-term collaboration with this customer, but also with other customers. And then it led to the open source project that I work on now,
Mm.
because there were problems that the architecture identified and software that was needed that requires collaboration between different organizations to come up with standards and exchange it. And so that work led to my open source project, which was designed to actually fill the gaps between the commercial products.
I do think
Uh,
that's one of the best things about the engineering world is that there's there are ways that you can get to like from point A to point B, and you can have so many ideas from so many people to get there. And I really like the sort of like the creativity side behind it. I think
yeah.
that's really, really cool.
And the thing open source development teaches you is the broader the perspectives you have in the team, the better the results. And that's, because when we were, our initial work on Nigeria involved people who worked in product companies as well as end users
Mm.
at different parts of the organization. So we always had yeah, but you can't do it that way because we need it to do X type discussions. Plus, you had the detailed engineering. Well, actually, if we're building something that's going to be enterprise, robust enough for large scale deployments,
Mm.
then it has to be done like this. So you had the two perspectives, and so the result was better than a company could have done on their own, or a sort of end user company could have built internally. So, it's a very powerful process.
I feel like that needs to be a quote, the broader the perspective. I
Mhm.
feel like that should definitely be framed somewhere. That's really good. Um, so you mentioned some of your current project. Is there anything exciting in the works at the moment?
The the whole project is basically, so it's a project that's designed to take commercial products and other projects and actually exchange information between them. So you can think of it as a big internet for metadata.
Oh yeah.
But it's actually got intelligence in it in terms of what it's sharing.
Oh wow.
And this has never been done before. So the whole project, from the way the repository is built, the way that the communication is done, up through to the types of interfaces we offer and capabilities and the frameworks that allow connectors to plug in, every single layer has innovation in it. And what we're working at the moment is to allow standard documents like markdown documents to be used as input to allow non-technical people to be able to add metadata into the system, particularly what we call business context. So this is, why does the business need data to flow from here to here? And who cares? And all that information then means that when things go wrong, you know who to ask. When they need more money, they know who to ask. When that person is asking for status, you can give status that's relevant to their business interests. So this is something that came out very early on as key to a metadata system, and actually it's not really supported by commercial products. So this area is very exciting because we're reaching new users through very standard and well understood mechanisms.
New and unexplored. That's really fun.
Yeah.
Ooh. So the next thing I wanted to ask you about is March is Women's History Month, and obviously here at the IED we are celebrating it. So I wanted to maybe ask, how has being in STEM and being a woman, how have you found that? Were there any challenges that you faced? Did everything run smoothly?
Well, no, I mean, I think it's difficult for anybody's career to run smoothly because, you know, you unless you're really not challenging yourself, you're always going to be in environments where maybe you don't fit, maybe your ideas are new, you're thinking differently. So most people have these types of issues, but the female aspect of it is quite interesting because when I started, there was no discussion about it, not really. And I went in assuming that, you know, as long as I worked hard and I did a good job, I would be rewarded, which of course is very naive and actually not true because it's all about sponsorship. It's about knowing knowing where you need to be, what the opportunities are. And a lot of the reasons that certain people progress better in an organization is because they have sponsorship. It might be they go to the right clubs or or whatever. And often senior people sponsor people who look like themselves because they can trust them. Yeah. And that's why you see this perpetuation of a lack of diversity. And it takes changing mindset in the senior people in terms of looking more broadly for their proteges.
Yeah.
So at the start, it was very, it was really not anything we talked about. And in fact, we were very embarrassed to talk about it because we wanted to be treated the same. Not that we realized we weren't being treated the same because there were certain opportunities that weren't being there. Now it's much more open. But the challenges are still there in terms of getting the sponsorship. And I think younger women see the challenges more. They're not so naive. And the challenge, and so for many of them, they go, do I really want to do this? Is this, it's more open and more obvious. And so there are other
So how would you suggest maybe pushing past that? If you had to give a piece of advice to a young woman starting in industry today who sees those sort of challenges and might be a little bit hesitant to actually start, what would you tell her?
So I think it is about finding a sponsor, a senior person that that you can talk through what they think you should be doing. Has to be someone to get on with, obviously. And
That,
the most important thing is you don't just sit there and take, I want you to help me with my career. You give back. So you help them with an initiative that they're driving, because most executives have a side issue that initiative that they're driving. So you help with that. You accompany them to meetings and write up their notes. You do research for them. And all the time you're preparing yourself for this new venture, right? You're learning the right skills, you're meeting the right people, and through um your volunteer effort, effectively, you are setting yourself up for the next stage. So obviously you still need to do your main job properly, but your sponsor will just put you in the right conversations. And it's scary, right? You're dealing with things that you'll never say, it's deliberately stepping into another world, but it's how you grow.
I love that. I like the fact that if you stay in the same environment, you won't grow, will you? You have to definitely put yourself out there a lot more.
Yeah.
Um, and would you say the same thing for all
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, yes. This
professions?
is because you don't have to be female to be disadvantaged
Mm,
because you came from a slightly different background. Maybe you didn't go to the right university. Maybe for many people. I mean, this is I spent many years in a team called the Women's Leadership Team, and we were working on diversity issues in IBM. And the reality is that more men benefited from our efforts than women did. So we did a lot about part-time work, and that allowed more men to do part-time when their children were young, and have a bigger part in their family than they could have before. Because
mm,
we made part-time work acceptable, you could still get promoted while you were part-time. It just became part of the fabric. And a lot of our other education around communication, working with executives, that sort of thing, was we always made it open to everybody, and it was surprising how many people benefited from it, even though we started with a female focus.
wow. And would you say that there's one skill in particular that you would need to succeed in this industry, if not your specific industry, or would you
Yeah,
say
so
there's no one right answer? There's
yeah, I mean,
things.
communication comes down to it because you're trying to exchange ideas, and that can be stressful.
Mm,
So dealing with that is hard. But I would say when you think about your skills, it's important to think of them in three buckets. And so there's your current job, and this is what I need to know, these tools. I'm doing this. I need to know this industry. I need to know this stuff, and that's good for this job. But in the background, you're also learning how to work with people. And you are learning broader design skills that can be applied to different projects. So, so you've got people, you've got the general design skills, and then you've got the specifics for this job. The specifics for this job keep changing all the way through your career because, the topic you're looking at, the technology you're working with can change. But those design skills go with you. They are what makes you a professional. And then, of course, your ability to work with people increases your chance of success.
mm,
So if you think about those three buckets and make sure that you're investing in all of them, but also when you go for a new job and you might think, well, I don't know anything about that technology, actually, you can still go in and be a useful person because you have your design skills and you can work with people to find out what you need to do. So that is the structure that gives you the ability to move jobs and to move forward. Does that make sense?
does make sense. Um, I quite like the idea of visualizing. So that's quite helpful to put it into perspective. And for me personally, I found a lot of engineers help, like they visualize stuff a lot better than most people.
Mhm.
So I think that's really going to help. I think.
Mhm.
And you said about like going for new jobs and the current jobs are ever changing because
The
the
world is
industry is
changing,
always
yeah.
changing.
Mhm.
Um, is there anything that you hope for the future of engineering? Anything you'd like to see become either more widely used or develop?
Interesting. Well, I mean, for the future, I'd love engineers to be better recognized in society. not as people who mend washing machines and cars and things like that, but as people who make the world a better place. They actually create the computers and the building. It's so much of what we live in, and with today's world, is created by engineers, and it would be nice in the future that people saw that, and I think the message is getting out. But also, as technology changes, there's a constant shift between where the power is. Power could be for something new within very large companies. So if you think about AI at the moment, this power seems to be with the very large tech companies. But then as the technology evolves, they can't hold that power, and it becomes more available to everybody. And to me, the important thing is that pendulum continues to happen. So the open source organizations are key to actually making certain types of technology available to large, small companies, individuals, governments, whatever we're talking about, and it doesn't become a monopoly.
Yeah, I like the fact that the idea of engineers being more well recognized, because let's be honest, everything starts with an idea, and then someone's got to design it and then build it, and that all stems from engineers, doesn't it?
We tend to be the linchpin in many things. Yeah.
I like that. Right. So before we wrap up, is there anything that you'd like to tell those that might be listening?
Yes, I mean, so I've been reading things that saying, we won't need engineers in the future. We've got AI; it's going to solve all our problems. And I just want to say that's really not true. I mean, AI can follow patterns. So, we always make, if we're building a new surface, it's always blue. So, if that's what's written down, that's what the AI is trained on, all surfaces will be blue in the future. Now, that's a silly example, but the reality is the challenges change, and we've got a lot of challenges to deal with. That takes human innovation. That takes engineers. Even taking an existing AI and bringing it and using it for different things, it takes engineers, it takes data scientists. So these roles are not going to go away. We still need you. So please stay with the industry, develop your career, and enjoy it, and really celebrate what we do.
Amazing. And if our listeners wanted to find out more about you, is there any way that they could?
You can find me on LinkedIn. There's a somewhat out of date page on Wikipedia about me, which is my early career. But probably LinkedIn is probably the best. And also, if you want to see our work, that is the Egeria project, which is HTTPS : let me quickly check. egeriaproject.org. And so that will that you'll see a lot of what I do, and you can contact me through that organization as well as LinkedIn.
Brilliant. Okay, so thank you so much for joining us today. It's been an absolute honor and an absolute pleasure to speak to you. And those listening, don't forget to follow us on social media. They'll be linked below. Amazing. Thank you.
Bye.